Yutet Tevet, Samech Vav, page Nun Tet.
We got the land.
Oh, you did?
We got the land, now there's the house. You don't even know the big Tevet there is.
There's a shit in the house of being the mouse of milk and shit.
Find us a donator.
We have to come more often, huh?
I missed 2 weeks.
Huh?
I've missed 2 weeks.
That's a long time.
It is.
2 weeks, my chef can be here 10 times, so. All right.
Is that Samech Vav?
No.
All right, so we saw the Ahava, which is Messiah in the Nefesh, from the abundance in the greatness of the Eibusha, the Gedulas, the Havaya, it's an union from the Spashtos, which was also by elements. And we saw that there was in that the union from Ribui Hanivroim, and we saw there was a union from Gedule Hanivroim. And we discussed how that's a union and even from that ein cage for sure, a cloud. She was a Niro Venike Gedulas Havaya. So we discussed the whole union of how the cosmos is surely an even from ein cage for sure, etc., etc. And then we brought down the Medrash Tilim, and we saw another oifen in that general, his oneness of the Baruch Sha'oma, V'hoyo Ha'ilon, how all the elements come about mitzad Amira Achas, even though in the Lashon of the Zohar, B'derech it's written B'machshava Achas. But there is a certain Gilsa in another part of the Zohar where it's written Amira Achas. And so Chassidus also is Mekayim that Gilsa, that it's hard to say that B'amira Achas. And the difference between saying B'machshava Achas or B'amira Achas is Muvan. Which is Machshava is a koyach which is much more Mudal from the Metzius. A man thinks that it's not tied to the Metzius of the elements, but the Metzius of his life, as the famous Satan has it. It's put down in Ayom Yom from Trachten wird Gornish. Just from thinking, nothing happens yet. But by a man seen even thinking is a inyan for Havdalah. So Lamaila, so we say B'machshava Achas, so we mean on a koyach duty mugbal stu miyuchad with the Hebrew we say B'amira Achas, and that already brings it down into a lower level in Gilui Alakus, and yet nonetheless we say even there it's only Amira Achas. Well, that shows just how Ein Arich the elements are B'klau to Amitius Inyan from Alakus. The whole there we saw that was his boneness Baha'ora, Helakisa Mislavesh Ba'elements. That's a bear where we were holding. So despite all the greatness and the unbelievable Ein Shir case that he sees in the creation and in the cosmos of the cloud, he comes to the conclusion that nonetheless that all of that is only a Ha'ora Bilvad, from Etzem Elikus, which is L'mayla Legamri, from all of that. And before we just said it, we say Amira Achas and not Machshava Achas, and that makes it even as it were more appealing, the whole union from one Amira that can be this unbelievable Ein Cage. And so therefore that makes it the union Elikus is Yoker Ba'enov, and he's got a tremendous Yisraelis of Cheftze V'Ratzainoi to be Dog in Elikus. So that's one Inyan. So now we see a new, a further, what you might call vista in the Inyan of Avos Hashem. The Kasher Mizbeinen B'Ho'er Ein Seif Shalamayla Mi'Eilamas. If he's the Ike is boneness is in the Eibishter is light, the Erein Seif. How it is L'mayla Mi'Eilamas. Eikshe Mufla Mi'Eilamas. which mufla, meaning wondrous or withdrawn or transcendent from the Ilamas. The close area of our highest slabish per Ilamas. He said, because what's the calculation in this Inyan? That if you take the whole generality of the of Achayis, which was mislabish, which entered B'derech Pnimius into the Kelim of the Elamas, like we just saw before. Afilu b'Elamas Yenim hu ha'ora levat, like we just established. Aval Atzmus Eirin Teiv hu mufla mutal me'Elamas, but the very essence of the divine light, how he is miyuchad with the Eibishter's essence, then that's mufla mutal me'Elamas. Umasik bezeh eiches ve'even ha'afloa. Now this thing we had earlier, before we began talking about the Nekudas Ha'ava, we discussed these two types of hisbonenus and Ve'even Klali in a general way. We saw there was hisbonenus in the which is mislabish pe'ilamas, and then we saw there was what we call the union of Hasogas Hashlila, that was possible for him to be masik al chaponim by way of negation and what we call withdrawal. The how it is l'maylam in ha'elamas, but he can only do that in an indirect way. That's to say that the inyonim he knows in the chiyuv, he shoylol and he negates and literally detracts of those inyonim. Now they are in the higher madrega, but that doesn't mean that he's actually being masik, the higher madrega per se. But he gets upon him a recognition in the haflua. And then we saw that there's somebody who's medactic, b'yesa, and has a very high ishtadlus and devotion to these oifane asoga, then he can even come to an appreciation of the what you might call the quality and the manner of that reflow. In other words, we saw he can even have some asoga in the actual hafloa of the madregas ha'seive from the madregas ha'mamale. We saw that that's a very high madrega, and he can only do that, but there are shlila of an unless we said that this shaykh to have such a asoga. So therefore he comes so that union of the of that type of asoga also brings to an ava. It's also got a ava which comes as a result. But the day is there through that form of asoga that we discussed before. Bo the day ava rabo. Now he comes to a unlimited ava. Ava rabo sheyakpoich ba'atzmus eirin say that he wants, and he's gone on the word yakpoich in Hebrew means rotzen pnimi. The word tevet means rotzen pnimi. Stam the word rotzen means even an obliged will. And the famous raya from that is the lotion which occurs in many places in our sages. Well, not many places, upon him in certain places, that you can beat a person until if you need him to say Reitza Ani, Al Pidin, he has to have a rotzen in a certain thing, then you can beat him until he says Reitza Ani, and that's considered a rotzen, even though it came mitzad beating him, mitzad echreach, of it's called rotzen. So therefore we see that rotzen is a where Beklal mensch indicates but even that he wants it. It doesn't matter mitzad what. He says he wants it as he wants it. But that's in for rotzen. Aber yachpoitz is from the word chefet or chofeit, but that means the pnimis harotzen of the mensch. That's called cheftzei. And therefore we see often in Siddur the two lashonos that follow one from the other. Ritzvei noive cheftzei. You start off with a more outward rotzen, and then you come to a more Pnimius rotzen. So in these madregas where he's come through such a tremendous effort in the Stadler in Rufnius to go up through the different levels of the Hasogas Achlila, and he comes to an appreciation of the even afloa of the which we call it B'derech Klal, the Sei Vev Kolam, and the Atzmas, Al Shlomaila from the Eilmas. So that brings him to the one that he wants by even Pnimi, Shiyakpoitz. Ba'atzmus eirin seif. He wants only the inifan, atzmus of the divine light. In other words, mamish miyuchad with atzmus is upon it. Or kamoi, like it's written, David HaMelech says in the Tehillim in Perik Ayin Gimel. Just near the end, he says, "Mi li b'shomayim ve'imcha lo chafatzti ba'oretz." So this is the famous statement made by David HaMelech, that he says, "Mi li b'shomayim." Who do I possibly have, even in the highest madregas harayah in the heavens? Mi li, meaning could anybody possibly satisfy my longing for Elokus just from what you can offer me, b'shamayim, meaning even in the highest madregas harayah called shomayim. So the word shomayim in Ruknius is a term for high madrega, how they call elevated and transcendent madregas. And then he said, "Ve'imcha loy chafatzti ba'oretz." And he said that that even though I'm down here, ba'oretz imcha loy chafatzti, anything which is only with you. In other words, anything which is not you yourself, but it's with you. In other words, it's some form of revelation of you, of it's not you yourself. And it's well known that the word imcha in the Lashon of Lashon Kodesh, and even in certain places in Divrei Chazal, the word im with the ayin, meaning with, can mean botel too. Imcha means that which is botel tofel lecha. So that's even a higher in here. The Shamayim, well, that's obvious that they're only Giluim, they're only revelations in Gilead, I'd say. But Imcha means that which is mamish botel to you, meaning even the which is mamish kolol, etz lecha be'atzmuscha. He said, even that, loy chafatzti ba'oretz, even though I'm down here in the world, my love is so great that I don't want anything, even that which is imcha, even that which is tofel, or botel, b'teicha atzmus, even that I don't want. That's a tremendous statement on the part of David HaMelech.
So how could imcha be together with oretz?
Huh?
Oretz refers to generally on the lower level.
No, we just explained that imcha means tofel ubotel lecha. I just went into quite a few sentences about the word imcha, meaning tofel ubotel, meaning that which is niklal in the atzmus.
Right, then it says lo chafatzti ba'oretz.
No. Doesn't mean loy chafatzti ba'oretz. It means that even though he's ba'oretz, loy chafatzti, I feel that which is imcha. In other words, his madrega is so great that he doesn't want even that which is imcha. We just, I just was masbid the whole thing, I think, sufficiently. But he says, loy chafatzti, he doesn't want it. Loy chafatzti, he doesn't want even mitzad rotzon pnimi. He doesn't want that. Now this is the famous statement based on that pasuk and on that understanding in the pasuk. This is the famous statement made by the Alter Rebbe. What everybody's familiar with the famous, it's also brought down in the Maimah, what we mentioned, that the Rebbe said the famous Maimah on Yud Aleph Nisan, Tavshin Lamed Aleph, where he touches the Pikeach, the different madregas in the Pikeach, that he was there when the people came in with the king and the whole business in the Medrash. And so he brings down over there that this is, it's written in Derech Mitzvah Selcha. The Rebbe, the Talmud Tzedek, brings that he once heard from the, not he once heard, he heard it a lot, from the Alter Rebbe, that he heard the Alter Rebbe, this man, Tfilosei, they used to say, ich will nicht gar nicht. This began. I don't want anything. Ich will nicht dein Gan Eden, ich will nicht dein Olam Haba, ich will mehr nicht als dich allein. I only want you yourself. Familiar, you guys heard the famous story. So the Rebbe, the Talmud Tzedek, writes that. He brings it down in the Sherish Mitzvah Satfila in the Derech Mitzvah Selcha, quite late in the piece, not right at the end of it's a long mimer, it's about 48 prochim in that mimer, it's a big long mimer in Derech Mitzvah Selcha. About 2/3 of the way through, or a bit more, he brings down that story, and he writes in brackets, K'may Shomanu Rabbeinu, Nishma Siyednu, that means the Alter Rebbe. And he brings he used to say, And the Chassidim add to that, it's brought down in other places, the Chassidim, the Alter Rebbe used to bang his head against the wall when he was holding by Madrigas like that, right? In the Mars. The Mars with the Alter Rebbe used to bang his head against the wall. So it was a big shiloh how you do a tulip, but if I say he used to avoid the tulip. But once he damaged his forehead very heavily, it made a big bruise and a big wound in his forehead, banging his head against the wall. So they put cushions all around him. That's kind of way in the Mars. Yeah, they built cushions all around the area where the Alter Rebbe used to daven. So that if you would bang his head against the wall, he wouldn't do any damage. And it was when he used to say that Inyan, and so the Rebbe Samech Tzedek, they're connected with that posse. They used to say, I don't want anything. Eloi b'shamayim v'afilo imcha gam lo chafatzi. Gornish, shum davar, rak atzma sein seif. Itself, man, as dich allein, as we connected with that posse. We're talking about here about a very high madrega. That's a madrega gevoya in Ava and in Shukah to the Eivishter. Because he says about that lo yilter shiapis batzma sein seif k'moy libi shamayim ve'im chalecha fatzti. Shelo yilter b'chol hagiluim ki'im tachlis cheftei v'retzoinoi hu b'chinas atzmas eiroin ein seif. In other words, he doesn't want anything at all. And Olam Haba, Olam Haba, that means all the Giluim after Moshiach and after Tchias HaMeitzim. That's going to be just unbelievable. Gilu ain't safe, Ad ain't Tachlis, Ad ain't, Ad L'Neitzach, they talking about, but how in the end? Nonetheless, he said that's all revelations of the Eibishter. Lorota. He wants only Atzma saying save himself. So it's very surprising how everybody manages to remain so calm and without any sign of any particular his pilots, etc. In these classes, we have to assume this from the fact of having learned in Chabad and being aware of the greatness of the Shlita, of the Chochmah, being a Vadas, so everybody remains very calm, even though they hear these unbelievable. So somebody should have gone out through the window or something. That's what the Alter Rebbe said. That's what's written here. You have to come to a Zayinian that all you want is Atzma saying, say. Exactly. You know the story with the Badija talk about going through the window. That was another thing. It wasn't connected with Mamish, but he didn't say that his bonus from Atzma saying, say. Oh, you know the story about the Vadishim with the Lulav, you don't know the Maasa. See, you guys, you're not up to all the Maasas. There's once the Vadishim, I believe it's Vadishim, he bought his Lulav and he got it all ready, but you can't make a bracha on the first night in the Sukkah on the Lulav, you got to wait till the next morning. That's when so the whole big Birin says why? He's supposed to have to be Mamshik the Maki for the Sukkah, then he can be Mamshik the eating of the Lulav, which is Amshachah, but Pnimi is supposed to have the Maki for the Sukkah, the Kamatz. Whole big Birin says what it means is you can't use the Lulav till it's Neitzach Hamoy, until the beginning of the sun, the next day, that's when you can. So he was sitting the whole night, and he couldn't, he was going out of his carrier, and he can't make a bracha on the Lulav, he's got to wait till the next morning, the Levi to Vadichua. He sat the whole night, and he built up at the family, they made a mistake, that they put the Lulav and Esrik inside a glass cupboard. It's inside a glass cupboard. So the whole time he's watching the clock and he's building up this unbelievable lava, to make the bracha on the lulav. And all of a sudden he just sees the lulav. He forgets the glasses and he's went through the glass. He just went through the glass straight into the lulav, even though it was Yontif. I say given the master is Bamela, that's the type of Yislavas that you guys are supposed to have when we already got the window broken anyway. If somebody would have gone through it, it wouldn't have been such a terrible, damage. But we're going to see something even more amazing than that in a second. Yeah.
So how is what the Alter Rebbe wants is different than Mashiach, or is it different than wanting Mashiach?
Oh, that's very good. Yeah. Yeah, we have to say that with that, what the Alter Rebbe was indicating, that he was already holding by Mashiach. And he said, therefore, he wants his Atzmus itself. But according to what the Olam Habo implies, that you haven't necessarily got the Atzmus even in Olam Habo. So it all depends. What it boils down to is, this is sort of taking us slightly off the track. But it's a very good question that you ask. Because the whole union of Atzmus is going to be Mishkalat Abtu when Mashiach will come. But if I say that it depends, what your attitude is going to be even when Mashiach comes. And there's a famous mitzvah what the Rebbe always said about a Farbrengen. There's what the Rebbe told, the Rebbe said, it's not a story, but it's like how do you call it, an epigram, how do you call it, a vort, that when Mashiach will come, that the Chassidim are going to go out to meet Mashiach. And they're going to say to him, Shalom Aleichem Mashiach. It's very good that you came, Well, there's another miser with the bottle of mash. You know the miser with the bottle? We can just go on. There were all these misers, we're not going to learn anything. But the Chassidim are going to come out to Mashiach with a bottle of mash. Anyway, we kids it. Bottle with a bottle of mash, we'll have to talk about another time. So, the Rebbe said that the Chassidim are going to say, listen here, Mashiach, this is, this is Givaldi, but now, from now on, it's all going to be just Gilel, of course, laid on, it'll be just there, Gilel, of course, Adin Tzvei, Adin Tachlis. What's with the Tzomah L'chol Nafshi? We want Tzomah L'chol Nafshi. We don't want this, of course, we want to yearn and struggle, even after Mashiach, even after you're here, we want that should continue. So the Rebbe said that Mashiach will listen carefully, and then he will say, okay, all right, guys, it'll be Tzomah L'chol Nafshi. I feel I'm already here, I feel Mashiach is already here, but there'll be the Inif and Tzomah L'chol Nafshi, which means that even with all the tremendous Gilel Elokus of the Chassidim, what they've already understood Gilel Elokus, they already have a bit of a musik rochek of al Chabonim Efes was a musik in this whole Inif. They're going to go only for the Atzmas. The Chassidim are going to go only for the Atzmas. Mashiach is already right from the very beginning, he's going to give the okay. Which means that even after Mashiach will come, the Chassidim and the Chabadskis are going to be very restless. And they're not going to sit around with their crown on their head, enjoy all the Elikus. There's going to be tanks, Liasid Lovi also. The Chabadniks will be driving around in tanks and they'll be saying, listen here, don't be satisfied with this, we can have Atzmas. To shrei that you want Atzmas, you get Atzmas. He'd say, what's all this, these Giluyim, That's what you have to do, Liasid Lovi. Kacha Haya Muren from that his father's from the river. I remember very clearly that day his father said, I got into the wrong place. I got stooped away and I got rubbish crashed onto people's feet and everything. But I heard that, at least that part of it I heard. Right, anyway, by Rosh Hashanah for bringing, if you didn't know where you were standing and what you were doing, you could really cough it. I was a bit naive. I thought you could just go over anyway. And then there were certain people that had these tremendous chazokas, They had these pre-established places and all sorts of things. So if you came there, you just got, oops, you were bodily ousted from that. And then there was this huge form used to come down and slam down after every pass. They also had this huge form and sort of cut off everybody from one side to the other. So if you stood underneath that form, you could just be cut into two pieces. You could chop you into two without any Rahmanah. So the next thing I see this form coming down. So anyway, what it means is that you've got to want Atzmas. That's what it means. Ja, Mili v'shamayim v'im chalei chafatzi bor, shelo yiltze klau agiloi ki'im tachlis cheptze v'retzein hukis atmospheric tzei. Well, we didn't finish yet. Klolis is boninus elu hein betfila. You can find all these boninus in your davening. If you take the early part of davening, the Pesuke de Zimra, Ais boninus he begedulus havaya be'inim brias v'savas oilim. V'yeich shebamayma echad nivru kol ha'olim. So everybody will tell me in one chorus where that's written. Because it's written at the beginning of Pesuke de Zimra, Baruch she'oma v'hoyoho oilim. There was one statement, all the elements there came about, and the whole of the Pesuke de Zimra talks about the greatness of all the different creations and all the Inonim, all the heavens and the earth and all the other Inonim. So we see that we appreciate in Pesuke de Zimra, and we praise and we literally speak out the greatness of the Eibishter in the Brias V'Savas HaIlmas, V'yeich she'b'mayma echad nivro kol ha'ilmas. Yesh mi mi'ayin mamish. Like he brought down at the siyum of that whole thing. So that's Pesuke de Zimra. Uber Birchis Kriya Shema, what is the Ikar? He said the Ikar of Birchis Kriya Shema is Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. So he said that that would be Inyan, Kodesh. The Nakuda Klal of all Birchis Kriya Shema, after Ishtaba, is the Inyan of Kodesh. Eiksha Erein say Kodeshu Muvdalu Mufla Mi'oilmas. Because the word Kodesh means withdrawn. How do you call it? Transcendent and withdrawn. So the Ika is boninus in Birchis Kriya Shema is how the Eibishter is moved up and how he's mufla. Well, that was the second inyan we brought here. That's expressed in the word Kodesh. Yeah, and you say it 3 times. What is mavur? In Derech Mitzvah Socha Barichas, both in that mimer that we mentioned and another mimer over there, and in the Kutiter, the famous mimer in Pasha Moyer, going to get to the 3 types of malachim, what they say Kodesh. Then another says Kodesh, Kodesh, and another says Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. There are 3 different types of malachim. The Alter Rebbe is masber over there. The Ikar is boninus in Birchis Krishma is the the Havdalah and the Aflua of the Erin Seif Miho Elemus. That's the Indian of Birchis Krishma. And now he's a Kriya Shema, Haiku, is boninus bi'atzmas Erin Seif. In other words, that in Birchis Krishma you actually jump up another slav. And if you say that the Avis is Muvdal or Mufla, then you say, well, let's go to him, let's just go directly to him, as it were. You can't do that. There's no way of a soga that you can do that. So, Einochanami. But, nonetheless, the Indian of Shema Yisrael, Ochaponim, leads one in that direction. It leads you to that Indian of the love that the Alter Rebbe had of not wanting anything, only Atzmas Erein. So, because in the brachas of the Kriya Shema, you're more concerned with the relationship there, the Hasogas Hashlila, as we called it before. But in Krishma itself, then you're more concerned directly with the Havdalah absolute of the Eibishter, completely from Oilamet. What he said before earlier in the Maimon, that you can't really be masig that. And Einochanam, you can't really. But you can long for it, and you can go out to it, but you can cast yourself out at it, and you can say, as we're about to see, certain things which that implies, or certain things which we can deduce, as you might say, from that feeling, even though we can't really be masig it. And that's what he says now. But Krishma, Hoika, who is boninus bi'atzmas Erein Seif. And that's what we have to say. That's what the Alter Rebbe meant when he said, Mili b'shamayim v'im chaloi chavatzi. We have to say that he didn't say it when he was saying Kriya Shema, because you're not allowed to say anything when you're saying Kriya Shema. So that's one of the interesting little sort of tidbits of inquiry. When did the Alter Rebbe say that? Because he was actually heard to say it. So when did he say it? We have to say before he began. So he or after. Yeah, because you can't say that he said it just before he said the Shema. It would be a bit hard to imagine Azam Sotah. was put down in another Maimach Siddur from the Rabbi Rashab that he was heard saying it when he rolled on the floor of the altar. I can see you guys are all so puzzled as it is. You're so shaken by all of these inyanim that it's not really the point to go into that one. But he was once rolling on the floor of the altar, and he was heard saying that, not with tefillin on this time, heard saying, "I will not deine Disney, who was the dich there were certain inyanim by the Alter Rebbe, which by the other Rebbeim we didn't necessarily see. And that would sit there every now and then the Alter Rebbe would just toss himself on the floor and roll over. All sorts of amazing inyanim. We're saying Kanamochim to be marich b'seh. Nonetheless, it did happen. So, says the Rebbe, that's the inyan of Shema Yisrael. So how do we get kilu from the words Shema Yisrael to such a type of ordinance, such a type of reflection in Atzma Sein Seif, which you can't really reflect about it? So, how does it link? How do you get to that height? So then he said, "V'zeh inyan Shema Yisrael." So he says like this, that the word Shema, if we just take the word Shema, is Miloshen Havana. That means to understand. For example, you say to somebody, Shema, listen here. That means pay careful attention to what I'm saying. Yeah? And there's a Loshen, where is it written? Shmuel, Shema ki daber avdecha. Listen carefully because I'm about to speak, or please speak, and then I will listen carefully. In other words, that the word to listen, Shema, implies to be misboinen in what somebody's saying to you. In other words, to understand, and what you might call pick up clearly what he's saying. So that's the word Shema. So Shema Yisrael. So he said Shema first of all is Loshen Havana. V'Shema, and he said another inyan in Shema, hu inyan Shem Ayin. That the word Shema divides itself into Shem and Ayin. I might say, well, what is that? So if you looked in the Sefer Torah or in your Tefillin or in a mezuzah or if you ate there, and you see that the word Shema is written in ordinary letters, but then it's with a big ayin. So we call the ayin Rabosi. Ayin, which it has to be a certain number of oases, the size of an ordinary os, a big ayin. So therefore, we kilu alpi b'nimis haTorah. Sometimes we talk about like it being two syllables almost, as you might say, Shem and the word and ayin on its own. So he said Shema is a Shem with the ayin. V'hainu k'moishe b'chinas malchus oile b'zayin taktoinim debino shehu inin ayin rabosi. He said, well, that is the inin, like we just said, of the big ayin, the ayin rabosi. That's what makes it separate on its own. So what does he mean with that? The word Shem, as well known, means a name. And it's well known that Hashem is, on the one hand, connected with a person, and in a way very intimately connected with him, because if you say a person's name, then he will listen to you. All of a sudden, it will shuffle him. If he's not paying attention, and you call his name, and he'll all of a sudden show attention, because the name touches his essential being, and therefore it's brought down with Kuti Torah, Pasha Bolam. The Alter brings down that all of the chayas of the neshama, how it's mislavish in your guf, all goes through the name, but it doesn't go in a revealed way. It goes with derech elim, but your name is neged to the whole hamshacha of the chayas in your being, both b'pnimis and afilu b'makifim. Therefore, the minig yisrael is if chas v'sholim v'has melahazke, somebody is very ill, then you can alter his name or add to his name, and that brings like a new ashpah, and it's hoped that through that it will bring a new gilead, the highest, etc. Because the name has a big inyan, but with the inyan of highest, but it's not begolui, it's not something that we see. When you say your name, let's say you're called Avram, and you say Avram to yourself, or you let somebody call you Avram, you don't really see how that's nogea to your highest. but it is.
And how is it that you can have two people with the same name, and one of them, if they can be not well, and the other one can be...
Yeah, that's a good question. They both got the same name. So what is put down in the Sifra Kabbalah is that every name's got all sorts of different oisi, it's got all sorts of different implications, all sorts of different combinations of those letters, and so on and so forth. So one person being called Avraham doesn't necessarily mean that indicates how the other person's called Avraham. If they're not just because the word Abraham's got all sorts of different ways that the oisis can function, and they can indicate all sorts of different hamshachas of the name and so on and so forth. You follow? It's just that generally speaking we call him Abraham.
So the name plays out in the actions he does, or in his...
Yeah, it plays out, yes, it even come to the type of actions that he does. But Be'ikah, it's got to do with the way the neshama is machaya the body, and it gives life into the body. It gives the ordinary function of what we call the yichud of the nefesh with the Eivra Haguf. It can also affect even the way he acts, and it can even certain ways that he will act and that he will relate to the world around him. It's got to do with his name. Yeah. But these are all things that are not begoli. They're all not things that we can just say, oh yes, that's clear that this and this is the case. So that's the inyan of, if we take the sphera of Malchus, Lamaila, then we find all of these inyanim reflected. And therefore, the inyan of Malchus is called name, it's called Shem. Even though all the spheres are like the name of the Eivshter, but Malchus much more. And therefore we see that on the one hand, Malchus gives over into the world only a ha'orel b'uvad from all the Elikus, even how it is in the Esser spheres. And there's well known that Malchus said, for withdrawal of the whole etzem, Ashpon gives only a ha'orel b'uvad, just like the king, he only gives a reflection of his own self into his running of the whole country. Yet, on the other hand, we see that the inyan of Malchus are that ability to run all the Oilamas and to literally conduct all the Oilamas and to bring them about. Well, that comes from the essence of the Eivshter. So that's the pshat that the inyan of the Shem is connected in some way with the Etzem. And like we see, that's also a very hidden thing. The fact that it's mamish connected with the Etzem is even more hidden than the way it gives forth chayas. So the same with Malchus. On the one hand, it's connected with the Etzem. On the other hand, it gives forth all the chayas into the Elamas. But in both of them, it's behelim. First of all, it's not clear the whole kesher of the inyan for Malchus with the Etzem of the Eivshter. And zweitens is, we don't really sense the chayas that we have. I mean, we do sense it, but we don't really know what it's all about. And chas v'sholem, a man can live feeling that he has chayas, but he doesn't necessarily connect that with Elikus Afila. Edifar, the inyan of Shem is a good name for Malchus because it's got all these inyanim about it. I said, now, the ayin, he said that indicates a madrega of moichin, but that's a madrega of bina. This is very complex inyan. I'll just try to give it over briefly because it's not really the main center of our whole discussion here. I will suffice it to say that bina is already moichin. Chachma and Bina are the emitis, they are the etzem minyan of what's called moyach. However, in Bina, just like every individual sphere, then Bina has also got what's called Esser sphere. It has in itself Esser sphere. The difference between the Esser spheres, how they are in Chachma and how they are in Bina, that's a big discussion. But what's the principal inyan for our purposes is that Bina is the aspect of the moyach which leads eventually to awakening midas. In other words, you can't really have an arousal of midas unless you have what's called a proper reflection, and these bonanas which lead to that midah. You can have natural midas, that's another ma'aseh. Natural midas are not so good according to Silas. I mean, they're there, but you're not supposed to just act, only on your natural midah. Therefore, genuine midas and emerson midas, they come from his bonana, and they come particularly from Bina. The Chacham is too withdrawn to produce mamish the gila of the midah. So therefore we say that inside Bina, The Bina's got the lower 7 spheres, which are kolul in Bina. It's the fact that each sphere is kolul from Eser. They are already shy to the Inifamidas. They're how Bina is ready to go down and be mashpia into the midas and arouse the midas. And that's called the Zayin Taktuinim of Bina. In other words, in every sphere, the last 7 spheres are called Taktuinim, Lagabi, the first 3 spheres, which are Chokmah, Bina, Das, and they're called Elyonim because they're more, as we'll soon see in a second, they're more shy to the Etzer. And the other 7 spheres are already the beginning of the Ashpoah to our time. And in Bina, particularly that way, because the whole meaning of Bina is to be mashpia to midas. Ultimately, its whole purpose is to rise to midas. And therefore, inside Bina, the 7 lower spheres are like a very important aspect of it. And therefore, those 7 spheres are called the Zayin Taktuinim of Bina. But since we say that everything is kolul mi'eser, so they're also krulim mi'eser. In other words, that each prat is also kolul from 10. As well known how this is the spheres in Oilam Atikun. And therefore, 7 times 10 is 70. And that's the Inen of Bina, how it's ready to give forth into the midas. That's called Aleph Ayin Rabasi. Why? Because the midas are already called small Gavidat. But the way it is in the Moichin, before it reaches the midas, it's called big time. That's what you call Rabasi. It's still the Inen of the midas, how they're in a very high state. They haven't actually come out in the midas, but it's how Bina is preparing to give rise to the midas. That's what we call midas Shabbat sometimes it's called. And even in Akufa, there's madregas. Achaponim Klolius, that's the Inen of midas Adayah B'techa Seichel. So that's the Inen of Ayin Rabasi. But since it's a midas how they're still within Bina, then it's a very high madrega. It's a level which is basically still separated and moved out from any shoyrush to the worlds, because the worlds come about from midas. The worlds are the beginning of the ashpoah of the midas is what leads to the worlds. The unit from Bina, albeit gives rise to the midas, but it's not shayat to the worlds yet. And therefore, that's the Indian of Ayin Rabati. It's a Ayin. It's got shayat to the midas, but it's still how they are within the Indian of Moichin, with the Indian from Bina, and Shem is the Indian from Malchus. So how do they get together? So the Rebbe says that every now and then Malchus has an aliyah. In other words, that Malchus has an aliyah, in the sense that Malchus also literally rises up and elevates into the level of the Moichin. Which means that even though Malchus is the shurish of the whole Ashpoah into the worlds, into the Elames, it's the direct Ashpoah, it's the king, it's the giving of all the Inyanim into the world, like we said, the Inyan of Shein. But it goes up and it rises and it becomes Batil and Misbatil inside the Inyan of the Ayin. And that's the Inyan from Shema. And therefore, here's a very interesting dictum. The word Shema says that you must understand. What is it saying to you, Shema? It's saying, understand me. In other words, look at my word, which is Shema, and then begin to understand. So in other words, as he's written, the Rebbe doesn't bring it here, but in a Maimah from the Alter Rebbe, and also in a Maimah from the Friediger Rebbe, in the Chasna Maimah, the famous Maimah that he said by the Rebbe's Chasna, by the Sheva Brachas, dort steht das klar. And he says that the whole purpose of the statement is that you have to have Avona in Shema, means you have to have Avona bi Hashma Atzmai, Shi Shema Atzmai Hu Shem Ayin. They say that. In other words, that's the Indian of the Malchus, how it goes up into the Ayin Rabasi.
Does this mean that in this case, Das is also included within the 7? You said that?
In the 7 midas. No, Das is not included in the 7 midas. But Das is another, medium to which the midas have to go in order to reach their emes agiloi. In other words, they can't have emes agiloi unless they go to Das. But the shoyrush of the midas is in Bina. In other words, Das doesn't produce the actual beginning of the midas, where Mashenkin Bina Das. What Das is, the Das makes them intensive and fulfilled in a way that they really come out into proper giloi.
How does Malchus go into the Zayin Tachtonim? Because if you don't count Malchus as one of them, then there's 6 of them. If you don't count Malchus as one of the Zayin Tachtonim, then there's 6.
No. We mean the Zayin Tachtonim of Bina, which includes Malchus in Bina. The sphere of Malchus is way down further. The sphere of Malchus is way down there. The sphere of Malchus goes up into Zion Tachtonim of Bina, including Malchus of Bina. You follow? So when that happens, what happens? What does all that imply? That implies that there are certain moments and certain times, and maybe when you say Shema Yisrael, if you say it really the right way, then you can also cause that. You can cause Malchus to have an aliyah, and as it were, the whole world becomes batel. The whole shurish, or the whole illuminus is inside the inyan of Zion Tachtonim of Bina, and the whole world is just batel. You know the famous. You guys facing it. The Alter Rebbe says in the Kutfer in a place, it's very true place. The Alter Rebbe says when you say Shema, so you close your eye, you put your hand over your eye. So he says, why? Because when you say Shema, even the word Shema, he said the whole world becomes batel. And the whole world's not there. So he said, that's good. That's why you close your hand over your eyes. He said, when you take your hand away, he said, that's when the trick starts. And as they stated in the Kutfer, when you take your hand away, the truth. That's when the trick begins. Because you got to now come back into the world. It's like when you close your eyes, oh, this is great. The world is bottled. When you take your hand away, then the world. So the trick is that you're not supposed to take your hand away, even though you do. But you're supposed to leave it like that.
What if you don't put your hand in the first place?
Huh?
What if you don't put your hand in the first place?
Oh, that's an issue. If you don't put your hand in the first place, then you just stop. You stay on the ground. He says he's trying to play away. We just have the world the way it is. From the beginning, let's just have a kosher world. What do you know? I'm sorry. There's an old saying, once you learn chassidus, you can't go back to things the way they were before. That's what Rav Shmuel Munker said to the Alter Rebbe. The famous time that he had to the Alter Rebbe, who gave the right to take away the time from this world. So many thousands of people. Anyway, we do it. You do it of Chokma Bina, who Habito, the Chodeva, that in both Chokma and Bina, meaning that if you're in Bina, then everything is botel in an even from Yehuda Eloah. Eich Shekula Kamei Chalecha Shivei. This is a famous lesson. The Alter Rebbe brings in Perek Gimel over there in Tanya, when you get to Chokma Bina. He says, Mitzad Chokma Bina, Kula, particularly Chokma, Kula Kamei Kalei Chashivei. Everything in front of him is like nothing. Now that's the bittul of Chokma and Bina. And that's what he says, that the Ike Inyan of the Moichin are Koyach Ma. Even when they're revealed in something, even when they're a Koyach, their whole Koyach is Ma. What Ma means, it's a question, why is it there? In other words, Ma is like, what? What are you doing here? Who gave you the right to be a Metzia? Who said you can exist? You can't exist. That's what Ma implies. And Chochma is a koyach Ma. Its whole inyan is to express that question, how can things be there? Kula kamecha kalei chashivei. They might say, well, Bina is only a bit of a Metzia. Well, that's what he said. No, gam Chochma but gam Bina. The Bina is moichin. Since it's moichin, it's also kolol inside the inyan of Chochma. Therefore, even though it's already ready for the Zion Tachtonim, which are leading into the Midas, but it's still batil. And therefore, when Malchus goes into that, it also gets completely batil. So therefore, he said that's that's what we call Yehuda Eloah. That's called the higher Yichud. Yehuda Eloah, that means that there's no real Metzias. There's nothing really there. Kula kamei chaloicha chashivei. Ki hamoichin heila maila mi eilamas. Uki yadua bi'inyan alpaim shona kodma chulu. So he said, because the inyan of moichin are beyond oilamas altogether. This is a very famous principle. Tonight we're meeting up with a pad where they're always just throwing little nakudas that you really need to know, some of the background. So he says, Ki yadua bi'inyan alpaim shona kodma teiroli oilam. It's a famous statement of the Medrash Tehillim. It's a Medrash Tehillim. And it says that 2,000 years Torah preceded the world. Torah preceded the world 2,000 years. Alpayim Shana Kodma Torah Le'olam. So that comes along the Alter Rebbe, and he says, "Was it Taich Alpayim Shana Kodma Torah Le'olam?" Before the world existed, there was no time. I mean, that's one other. Time only begins here with the creation of the world. So what do you mean? Before Kodma Le'olam, the Torah is primordial to the world 2,000 years. So the Alter Rebbe says it doesn't make any sense. The person, it's like biting something that you can't chew. You can't say that 2,000 years before the world, there was no time. So therefore comes along Chassidus and it says an amazing thing. Chassidus says that Alpayim, 2,000, and even though we put in the word Shona, which Shona means like a year, but what we mean with the idiom for Shona is like it's something that continually repeats its own existence, you might say, reestablishes its own idiom. Is Alpayim. There's a pasuk in Mishlei, but the pasuk says, "Aleph chachma, Aleph chabina." I will teach you chachma and I will teach you bina, and it uses the word Aleph. But it's well known that the word li'alef can mean to teach or to inform. Oh yeah, that's what the word ulpan. Ulpan means a place where they're supposed to teach you. They're supposed to inform you about things. So it's better to keep away from them. Anyway, that's what an ulpan, that comes from the word aleph. What aleph means to teach. And therefore, the pasuk says, Aleph chachma, Aleph chabina. I'll teach you chachma, I'll teach you bina. So that's twice Aleph. So that's the title. Alpayim. It's like two teachings. But that's chachma and bina. Therefore, that's how the Alter Rebbe teaches it. Chachma and bina are twice Aleph. That's Alpayim. Kodma le'olam. The chachma and bina, they were primordial to the world. And they were beyond the world. So, what does he mean with the fact that they're primordial to the world? Right? They're beyond the world altogether. So he said that the moichin hein lamayla miho eilam. If you do a binyan alpayim shana kodma terah, the lochin b'madrei yezu hayichud hu b'chinas yichuda iloah dekula kamoi chaloicha shivei. In other words, what does he mean by saying that the inyan from moichin alamayla miho eilam is? What it means like this, considers that if we take by mensch, for example, if we take midas, like Ahav or other midas that relate to the world around us, then a midah only makes sense, and you can say that the whole mahus of midas, or the whole mitzvah, the whole, let's say, put it another way, the whole, what you might call, sense that it makes, that we have midas, is because there are other entities apart from us. And particularly other human beings. And therefore, because there's another human being, therefore there's an inyan with the Eibishter made in the nefesh called ahava. When ahava goes from one human being to another. Yira also relates to another human being. It causes awe and respect and all that type of thing. Bittul, and rachamim is a much higher form of ahava. Mercy. All these inyanim, but they don't really make any sense. You can have a theoretical ahava. You can say, I really love people, I love the world, I love the human race, but it doesn't mean anything, because as long as there's nobody to express the ahava to, then it doesn't really make any point that you would have such a midah, because what would it really help? And to just walk around the whole time, you say you love the whole world, but you do terrible things to them, it doesn't help, it doesn't make any sense, such an ahava. And therefore, the whole inyan of the mahus of a midah and the pu'ula of a midah is only two azulas. But without the azulas, the midahs don't really make sense, even though a person can say he has them, but they don't really make sense. Mashenkin the inyan from Mashenkin the inyan from moichin, we see that you can have moichin in such a way that on the contrary the azulas interferes. It's in a way better that there wouldn't be any azulas. Dainu, you want to really get stuck into something and really understand it and really put your mind into it, then what do? You put up notice on the door, don't disturb, please, don't come in now, because I've got to understand a certain Indian. So Chassidus asks a kasha on that, and we see that Talmido Yesha Mikuram, and David Melech said that from his Talmidim, he learned more than that. So we see that if you have other people in the inning of your understanding, then they add to your understanding. On the contrary, they don't evolve with you. So what Chassidus answers is that's two different inyanim. If we're talking about certain abilities to go back into the mokir of Seichel, then the Zulas causes what we call a Nisarusta Latata. He causes like a new arousal within you to the mokir of the Seichel. And that can cause new things to come out that if you hadn't had that person, you may not have got that far. But once we're dealing with a Seichel that's revealed itself to you, then the other person gets in the way. If you want to deal with that and you want to bring it out into your mind and make it meaningful and get it all set up in your mind, how you're going to give it out to others, etc., then the Zulas is Mevalbil. So therefore, it follows of his that the Gilui HaMoichin by the Mensch and his usage of his Moichin is Liatzmei, and on the contrary, it makes in a way more sense to talk about Moichin how it is Liatzmei. And it's more shy to him as an individual, and the whole definition of midas is dakir to Azula. And then what it says is that Kaviyochel midas the Eibishter made on by himself, Kaviyochel, the design tatoinim, which are the midas, the Eibishter made that only because he wanted oilamas, right? He had in mind that it's going to be Oh, but we could imagine that he would have moichin even if he never considered oilam. Now the truth of the matter is that everything Lamaila is not like that. The Eibishter only did anything because he had in mind the ultimate kavanah. He didn't need anything. He didn't need to bring anything about or to do anything, because he sholim b'tachas hashleim is bli klum. And therefore, the fact that he brought about moichin means that we ultimately know that he meant with that the union of eventually bringing about oilam. What we're saying is that if you stop at that point of moichin, after he'd already revealed them, then the Eibishter could have got by with that. He didn't necessarily need the oilamas to help him with the moichin. But he wouldn't have made moichin if he hadn't had in mind eventually to bring about the oilamas, because ultimately the Eibishter wants to give even his moichin into the oilamas. Even Kaviocha, he wants to give everything. But we can imagine that the moichin would make sense even if the Eibishter had never gone any further and he'd never brought about oilamas. To say that he's got moichin makes sense. But if he would have brought about the midas and not brought about the oilamas, then it wouldn't have had any point. Because the union from midas, when I say wouldn't have had any point, it means even from our way of understanding, it wouldn't have had any point, because the whole union from midas is for the sake of the oilamas. That's what the Rebbe means, that the union from moichin so what does that indicate? That indicates that the pnimius and be'etzem minyonim, the union from moichin is what we call aliyah v'istalkus. And therefore, when you get into a union from moichin, you tend to get out, the famous Mazim of Tevet Rebbe is the Mazim. You guys don't know there's a famous Mazim, but everybody should know.
There's many Mises.
Huh?
There's many, which one?
There's many Mises, yeah. So there's two Mises actually. There's many Mises. About the Mittel Rebbe with the moichin. There was once when the Mittel Rebbe, before he became Rebbe, when Kaviocha, he was young, inverted commas, and the Mittel Rebbe was davening in a shtibel, he was davening in a shul. And he was in the middle of davening and he was just completely gone, he was just absolutely up somewhere. So they came in the cleaner and he wanted to clean the shul. Wanted to clean the shul. Here's the Alter Rebbe's son sitting out in the middle of the shul. What's he going to do? So all of a sudden, two Sidim walked in. He turned to these two Sidim and he said, "What this? What's to clean? What's he going to do?" So the two Sidim said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just leave it to us." So they walked over to the Mittel Rebbe and they lifted him up under the elbow. See, one guy took one elbow, the other guy took the other elbow, and they just lifted him up. The Mittel Rebbe, he didn't know it. He still just carried him over into the Cheder Sheni. It was a little, in the old days what they called the Cheder Sheni, the Chabadnitzer, it was called. That was also in the middle of a famous Takwana. Carried him over to the Chabadnitzer, and they set him down over there, and the meantime the guy was able to clean the shul. When he wanted to clean out the Chabadnitzer, picked him up, carried him back into the shul, put him down, and everything like that. So, because the inyan from Moichin Be'etzim is the inyan of Aliyah. Its inyan is Duvekis B'lamayla Mi'ametzias. Therefore, when you're on a deep understanding of something, you tend not to see the Matzias of things, but you tend to see how they go upwards and how they're really bottled to something beyond that. In other words, you're ready to hear how this whole circus maybe doesn't really exist. Mitzad Pnimis of the Moichin. Therefore, that's what we mean. That the way the Eibishter made the Moichin is that their inyan is Aliyah Vistalgus Mi'ametzias. And the inyan for Midas is Dafki Yerida V'gilui Elamatzias. And that's the difference. Whatever the Rebbe says that mitzad the inyan from Moichin, then it's a bit of Yehuda Iloah. Yehuda Iloah means that we don't see the Matzias, and therefore we say Kula Kamei Chaloicha Chashiva. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any Matzias. That's the inyan of Shema. So after being Shema leBorach Shein Kveit Malchus Eilom. Shehu begins Yehuda. I'm sorry. Shehu begins Malchus. Begins Yehuda Torah. Now that's the inyan of Malchus. Shein, Kveit, Malchus. All those names all indicate kingship. Malchus, but that's Malchus going the other way. We were talking about Malchus that's going upwards into the Zion Tachtonim Dubina. Over the embassy inyan for Malchus is to make the worlds and to be mashpia into the worlds. Lamata. Well, that's Baruch Shein Kveit Malchus Eilom Ved, and that's Yehuda Torah. Because then Malchus wants to make the world, and wants to put into them a gilu which will make them bottle, but not bottle if they're not there. Because the whole purpose of Malchus is that the world should be there. And that's the whole idea of the concept of Malchus. So therefore, he says, "Yehu b'chinas Yehuda Malchus and b'chinas Yehuda Torah." The Yesh ki Malchus he makir al ha'elames. That's the makir of the world. V'yeh shalema bozeh she'ena ha'elames te'usim makim cloud. You can't say l'gabi Malchus how it wants the worlds to be there. The worlds don't have any place. The imkain ma mahavim. What are we making? If we say we don't want the worlds to be, then what are we making? And therefore we have to say that Malchus does want the worlds to be. We want him to be there, but we want him to be bottle. We want him to be bottle and even bittul hayesh. And I mean, when Yehuda Torah, Kula Kamei Chaloicha Sheva is called the inyan from bittul berman shius. There's no entity to talk about. It's just so much bottle that it's not to be considered. Mashing and Yehuda Torah means that we want the world to be, but we want it to be bottle. That's inyan for bittul hayesh. That's inyan for Yehuda Torah, and that's Malchus going in the other direction. Oh, but the meaning for Shema is how Malchus is being drawn up into the bittul of the Moichin. Akila, nothing is there. So now we know why we have to say both Shema and Baruch Shein Kveit Malchus Eilom Ved. Because you've got to know that everything is bottle. But then you've got to come back into the world, how it's really a inyan from Matzias, and the Eibush wants you to be in the world as if it were a Matzias, and to bring that bittul that you really know, having said Shema, into the world. But that's what we call the Yichud of Yehuda Eloah and Yehuda Torah. Come in the famous Kuntres that the Rebbe Nishma said in the Kuntres Eit Chaim, Barichas. But he wrote that for the Bochum and Tomchet Mim. So since we've got to consider the Bochum and Tomchet Mim, that they've also got a bit of a break, you can't sort of work them too hard. So maybe we'll pause at this particular point. So what it follows is that you've got to have both Yehuda Eloah, but you've got to also have Yehuda Torah. Ki Malchus he makuir alo elames. Ela she'em b'chinas bittul hayesh. Aber gabi her ein seif shel hamayla mer elames. Elames einem teisi makim klal. That's the legabi the emes. Hainu she'einem b'chinas matzias klal. That they don't have any matzias at all. Mitzad the emes of Yehuda Eloah. So So what are we going to do? I've got to work it out. Either they have or they don't. What are we going to do? What are we going to? How do we deal with all this? So therefore he says, who? We'll see more about that as we go along. What it ultimately boils down to is that mitzad tamim hayiduim lo yisbara. That's one of the great sveders in the whole Indian of the Bria. The Eibishter wants that you should know both of those truths. They're both true. And mitzad elikus they're true. Because Malchus is a giver of the Eibishter. And Malchus is mamish mushrash in Atzmusa. He's part of a very high place. And mitzad Atzmusa, he wants that there should be a world that looks as if it's a world. And you've got to relate to it to a certain extent like that. But at the same time, he wants you to know that it's not really like that. So just make it just it's not really like that, or leave us alone. That's the whole meaning of citizen, the whole meaning of existence. Is that you've got to live on two different planes, on two different levels. On the one hand, you've got to be in a world that's what he wants, that the world should have a certain place, and it should be a Matthias, and you've got to affect that, and you've got to come into it and make it the way the Abishter wanted it as a world. The only way you can do that without falling into its into its grasp. The only way without falling into its grasp, you have to know that really mitzad etzem pnimius, it's not really anything. Or mitzad the kavona aliyina, mitzad what the Abishter will, that is your efforts.
Pardon, sorry?
It's something. It is a little something. Mitzad the kavona aliyina. It's an amazing how they call it dichotomy. Yeah, it's a form of dichotomy. It's based on the Emerson Yichud. The fact that really everything is not really there. That's how you can face a world which is meant for some reason to be there. But if you didn't know the whole secret of it's not really there, then God forbid you would get caught up in it. So. The way nowadays not to get caught up in anything is to say we want Moshiach now. And to say Ad Mosai and to say Yechia Melech Moshiach. Have a good evening.